Hello guys and welcome back. This is the foodborne parasitology. Today we're going to view an interesting topic because not as many people know that we can find parasites in fruits and veggies too. So today we are going to discuss that. So let's begin. Okay, so we start with cestodes. In this case we have here Equinococcus granulosus. It's very similar to Taenia solium. Indeed, the scolex is pretty much the same. Also, the eggs are very similar to Taenia. The difference is that it only has 3 rings, one immature, one mature and one pregnant. And the thing is, we have 1500 eggs on each segment. This is the life cycle. We start with the adult in the intestine of who? Of the definitive host, the dog in this case. So, embryonated egg in feces, and then this is the infective stage in which we can get infected, and in this case a sheep as well. So inside ourselves the oncosphere hatches and penetrates the intestinal wall. Then it forms the hydatid cyst in various organs. Then the protoscolex from cyst and the scolex attaches to intestine, and then the adult is created again. So basically what we have here is that the dog has these eggs in feces. We ingest those eggs via fruits and veggies, and then they create the hydatid cysts in various organs. And then the dog, by ingestion of cysts in organs, for example of the sheep, they can get the cysts back in their system, and inside the dog the protoscolex is formed. It starts to form from the cyst, and then it attaches to the intestine and it starts to create the adult as well, and the cycle repeats. So, epidemiology, we have it in Asia, Africa, South America and Australia mainly. For the majority of times it is asymptomatic, but when it's not, it makes us feel very bad because it causes the hydatiosis. And what does that? Okay, it's creating an hydatid cyst in liver and lungs mainly, and various adults which are coming from this can cause inflammation, because if those cysts, those hydatid cysts which we are going to have near the liver and the lungs, if they break, they will probably give us an anaphylactic shock. And a very important thing they do is they create pressure in the organs, because they can grow very big, those hydatid cysts, that they can also create a scoliosis. The diagnosis, well, clinic, radiology and serology. The treatment, surgery, is very important. We need to remove those cysts. And then, of course, albendazole and praziquantel. These are always present. And the prophylaxis, dogs, control and treatment. And we do not want to feed them wild animals' organs. Okay, so that was Equinococcus granulosus. We also have Equinococcus multicularis, which is exactly the same, but the definitive host is not the dog, but it is the fox. And they attack mainly the lungs. They are present in North Europe and places where we have wild fruits. So this is the transmission. If we move on, we have the nematodes. We have strongholdus stercoralis. It's a gel-helminth, which means that can go through the soil and can penetrate our skin. And it has a pretty interesting cycle because only the females are parasites, and the larvae infect the food. So the cycle starts with the rhabdiform larvae in the intestines, and those are excreted through the feces. And then they can they will create the filiform larvae, but they can go either directly or via this cycle where they differentiate as male and female. They create an egg, and then from the egg another larvae is coming from, which is the rhabdiform, and then they create the infective filiform larvae, and this can penetrate the skin of the definitive host. Once inside, they go to the small intestine, and the female of the adult is created. The female starts to create the eggs, and the eggs will give us, guess what? Rhabdiform larvae. And in some cases, the filiform, because the rhabdiform larvae in the large intestine become filiform and penetrate the intestinal mucosa, creating the auto-infection. So this cycle is very, very complicated, and this parasite, the strongholdus cercoralis, is very important as well, because the auto-infection is something very dangerous. Where? Well, almost everywhere. And we can find it in soil and veggies. It causes dermatitis, of course, because it penetrates the skin, and pneumonia, because it can go to the lungs and create also bronchitis. It creates also gastritis and diarrhea, since it attacks the small intestine indeed. Diagnosis is through eosinophilia, coprology, which means analysis of feces, and the serology, ELISA type. The treatment, ivermectin or albendazole, and the prophylaxis, we have to give the treatment to the affected people, and we have to control the feces and the soil. Then we have the Ancylostoma duodenale and the Necator americanus. These are very similar. They both have big mouth, and the female is bigger than the male. The eggs look the same to others, but adults and larvae do differ, and is the same as here. This is the cycle. We start with the eggs in feces, and then we have the rhabdiform larvae. Then this larvae will grow to the filiform, which is the infective one, and the filiform, as we saw earlier, can penetrate the skin. And once inside, they can go to they enter the circulation indeed, and they go to the lungs, and then once in the lungs, they are cut up and swallowed. So they can get to the intestines and create the adults. And guess what? The cycle repeats. But Ancylostoma can also be dormant in tissues. By the way, the cycle is the same for the Necator americanus. They are very common, very, very common, and 1/8 of the whole world population have it. They create skin damage, of course, pulmonary hemorrhage, and bleeding feces. The diagnosis is anemia, coprology, and eosinophilia. The treatment is albendazole, and the prophylaxis, well, treatment to the affected people, feces and soil control. And then we have the protozoa. We have the Trypanosoma cruzi. Vertebrates, trypomastigote in bloodstream and amastigote in tissues. Invertebrates, epimastigote, and bedbugs. Yes, because you have to know that this parasite can affect both vertebrates and invertebrates. And it has 2 cycles, as we are going to see now. The bug is going to put his feces into a wound we have, and then inside the wound, the trypomastigotes of the Trypanosoma cruzi are going to invade a tissue, are going to invade a cell, and amastigotes multiply by binary fission inside our cells in the tissues. And then guess what? They grow and they create trypomastigotes again. And this can reinfect all the cells. But they can also infect the bug if the bug bites us and gets some of our blood. So inside the bug, the epimastigotes are in the midgut, and then they multiply, and the metacyclic trypanosoma in hindgut. And then guess what? Once they are inside the gut of the bug, if the bug gets his feces into our cells, into our wound, the cycle repeats. And we have to mention that many mammalian species have been recognized as reservoir hosts. We can find this parasite everywhere, and mainly in America. We have to mention also vector and blood transmission. Vector is from mosquitoes and bugs, of course, and blood, because if we have a transfusion, well, we will probably get infected. The pathogenesis of Trypanosoma cruzi, cell destruction, because they invade our tissues and they multiply inside them and they make it useless, they destroy them. Cell destruction, neurotoxin, because they create toxin, and autoimmune diseases. They have an acute and chronic form. The acute can be fatal, and there are no specific phases. We don't know which phase of the parasite can get us the fatal stage. And the chronic, when they go accumulating, and then they can attack us lately. Diagnosis, well, clinic. Serology, as blood test, of course. PCR for acai. Okay, so PCR is not for humans, but it's for acai. Acai is a fruit from Brazil, which is similar to blueberries in shape and color. And it's very, very common that acai may contain Trypanosoma cruzi. So a PCR for acai is a very good way to detect it. The treatment, benzimidazole and nifurtimox. The prophylaxis, the bed bugs control, transfusion control, be careful with that, and acai control. You don't want to eat acai if the PCR is positive to that. And then we have Fimbriolatica. This is a trematode. It has a conic form at the top and is not very small because it's quite big, 2 to 3 centimeters, and it has 2 suction cups, and it has inside operculated eggs. You can see here, this is the Fimbriolatica with the cone at the top, and the cycle starts with unembryonated eggs in feces. Then the eggs become embryonated in the water, miracidia hatch from eggs, and then they invade a snail, and then inside the snail the sporocytes, the iridia, the cercaria, and then the cercaria leaves the snail and they infect what? The vegetables from the water. The vegetables that are planted in water are the most affected, and once we eat those vegetables we get infected. Inside ourselves, they exit in the duodenum and they penetrate the intestinal wall and migrate through liver parenchyma to biliary ducts. And in the biliary ducts, the adults are created. The ruminants are the typical definitive hosts. Why? Because they eat a lot of leafy greens. Epidemiology everywhere, especially in cultivated areas where they cultivate leafy greens. They cause, well, the Fimbriolatica causes hepatic problems and obstruction and malabsorption of fats, because being on the biliary ducts, they block the bile, and bile is very important to absorption of fats and fat-soluble vitamins. If you want to know more about fat-soluble vitamins and fat absorption, check my playlist on nutrient description. Diagnosis is coprology, of course, because they are on the biliary duct. They can be released to the small intestine and then go through the feces. And serology as well. The treatment is triclabendazole, and prophylaxis, snail, feces and water control. As we always say, snail control is the worst, is the most difficult. And a recommendation to not eat raw aquatic plants. Okay, so that was it for the video on the fruits and veggies parasite. I hope you liked the video. If you did, click the like button below, subscribe to the channel if you're new, share this video to friends and family to let them know that parasites are almost everywhere, even in vegetables. Just kidding. Remember to download the diagram, this diagram I used for the presentation. I will leave it down in the description so you can download it for free. It's on my website. Hope you enjoy it.